Hello NEURODIVAS, welcome back to me gaff. Long time no see. I've missed yous. How have yous been? I'm going to start doing one long podcasty, chatty, sit down style video, either weekly or bi-weekly. Just whilst I'm in a really indoors era of my life at the moment. So lock in, darling, because we got a lot to talk about. And a 30-minute yap, don't threaten me with a good time. As you can see by the title, we're going to talk about rave burnout. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I got out of it. If you've got ADHD and you're shackled to London life and have been popping puss for over a decade, then this is for you. As we go into our 30s, I'm going to be 31 next month. If you would like to send me a gift, I ain't going to say no. But your gift can actually be liking this video if you want and subscribing. Thanks, babe. As we go into our 30s, I've spoken to other people and we've all experienced some kind of rave burnout where we're just a bit done. And then we have a bit of an identity crisis because we have been popping puss for so long, like over a decade. And the thing is, in London, that's what you do, innit? At the weekend, you go out and that's sort of the life. So you start thinking, oh my God, for the last 10 years, was I actually enjoying that? Is that actually me? There was once a time a couple of years ago where I said, you'll never catch me at a rave again. Clearly, I weren't myself. But that's how bad it was. That's how bad I was feeling. I didn't know that I was so burnt out. And it wasn't, we're going to talk about this, but it wasn't just rave burnout. I think it was a life burnout, ADHD burnout. At the time, it was undiagnosed ADHD burnout. But I do think rave burnout is a real thing. So I'm going to tell you exactly how I fell back in love with the dance floor. So what does rave burnout actually feel like? For me, I felt exhausted. RA felt like a toxic ex. Like I was genuinely avoiding opening the app. I was also avoiding like DJs, new music, new events. I stopped actively looking to go to events. I felt overwhelmed. And you know what? When someone would text me and be like, do you want to go to this? Or they would send me an event, I would feel rage. I'd be like, I can't do this anymore. Even when I was going out, the feeling weren't the same. I was taking it for granted. It was like something I just was doing because I'd always done it, you know? My heart and soul was not on that dance floor anymore. At the time, I was doing back-to-back weekends. I was working 9 till 6, but it's not really 9 till 6, is it? I was getting up at like 5 to try and get exercise in, then go to work, then spend all day at work, not get in until 8 o'clock, do that for 5 days a week. Then it's someone's birthday, they've chosen an event, then it's the rave that I wanted to go to. Do you know what I mean? That cycle constantly would burn anyone out. And I didn't even know what that was. And I'd been doing that, by the way, since my early 20s. You can't ever say I was not committed to the calls. And whenever I would be catching up with mates, then we might have not have seen each other for, I don't know, three months or whatever, just classic London life. They would always be like, fucking hell, you're always out, mate. You're never not at a festival. But I'd go solo. I would travel up and down the country for raves. I've been abroad. I've used all my annual leave in the past just for raves and festivals. But I didn't know that I was self-medicating in all senses of the word. Going out itself, like the dance floor itself, is a way for people with ADHD to regulate. We're stimulated by the visuals, the lights, the movement of the floor. And I weren't aware at the time, but my brain was like, it was like quiet, like there was not a fault in there. And usually I have like thousands of thoughts per second fighting their way to get in. And house and techno specifically, it can put you into like a flow state. And I would spend hours there. Like you couldn't get me off the dance floor. But then it starts getting sketchy. I was also self-medicating with booze. I was also self-medicating in the wrong ways, taking it too far, boozing, bits in, and I didn't know that I had an addictive personality where if I'm enjoying something so much, I will just keep going. There is no off switch until my body physically just shuts down. We also have delayed processing. So we think things are the best fucking idea at the time, but our body hasn't caught up yet. We chase that feeling of normal, trying to cling on to as much dopamine as possible because we have obviously a dopamine deficiency. All of this, you're just not self-aware at the time. So I was treating it as a way of me feeling normal for a bit, and dopamine is addictive. I think being neurodivergent, you always feel a bit out of place, and it's not obvious, it's just a bit out of place. I don't know, I always felt like I was wearing a badge, like, oh, there's something a bit off with me. Do you know what I mean? This diva's a bit different. And all of it was a social aid. In terms of music, I feel like in London, there are a lot of repeated lineups, events, recycled tracks. Like, you'll get that certain track that sort of comes back around every couple of years or so, does the round at festivals all summer, and then it will go away and come back, you know. It all started to feel stale, and I just weren't excited by it anymore. It was around 2022 or 2023 that I also took a year break from booze. Nothing drastic really happened at that point for me to do that, but it was a build up of just the constant burnout cycles and me questioning whether I actually enjoyed it anymore, and the blurred lines between enjoying it and booze and bits and all of these things. I needed to come away from it all and separate it in my mind. I took a year's break from booze, I took a break from raves, and I knew that 6 months into that break that raves were not the reason for my burnout. Not alone anyway, because I was still just as burnt out, mate. But I was thinking more clearly without booze. I was able to do a lot of self-reflection, be really introspective about myself, which I never really had been able to do that before. Because if you're filling all your free time with things that numb you or escapism, you're never really present. And it was like the universe said, we're gonna do all of this now. You need this now. And I tell you what, actually, around that time was the start of my Saturn return, so it does make sense. But I also started my ADHD diagnosis pathway, which we can talk about in another video if you would like to know that story. I realised I loved raves. Of course I did. That is always going to be a part of me. I needed the dance floor. I needed music, and my mind and body needed it to function. When you take away all the extra bits, like the social aids, when you look at the science behind it, I couldn't ever give this up. The dance floor literally regulates me, and that's just music and movement doing that. It's also my biggest passion and interest of all time. Like, my disco, funk and soul knowledge is, yeah. And I love house and techno. I'm so excited by the thought of there being so much music that I ain't even discovered yet. There's just so much, and that gets me fired up. You know what I mean? It's just because I love things so fiercely and I can't have anything in moderation. I have to take it too far. And apparently you can have too much of a good thing. But because I was taking it too far and abusing it all got painted with the same brush. And I realised that it wasn't people sending me events that was contributing to the burnout. It was actually just people texting me full stop. I had no capacity to respond to anyone. I would get home from work after long days like that in the office, the worst place on earth for anyone with ADHD. I'd have -1 energy, and then I've got mates being like, oh my god, can't wait for this, and I'm just like, I just want to put my phone in a drawer and close it and walk away. The year break from booze, it had to be a year. It had to be that extreme. I even did Christmas without booze, by the way. That's how you know I was taking it seriously. And that is so tough as a neurodiva, mate. Christmas without booze, the amount of small talk and socializing. The thing is, I actually love socializing, but two things can be true at the same time. I'm not sure that people get that we are often quite extroverted, but we will just shut down. Our social battery will die and we'll just go non-verbal because it uses a lot of energy with us. We're already at half energy when we start the day. We never start with like a full bar, a full health bar. We always start with half. But it had to be that extreme because I needed to see clearly. I needed to connect with myself. This is how I started to recover from rave burnout. So with booze, obviously I started drinking again because margaritas, you know what I mean? But the difference is when I started drinking again, I knew there was like a thing in my mind then that I knew I didn't need it. I could just leave it and I could go to the pub or a social occasion and not have a drink if I didn't want that. Whereas before, it was never even a question. I'd never question it. I'd never even think like, oh, maybe I don't want to today. Those thoughts were never there. I also experimented with having one or two and walking away, and I was able to do it. I proved to myself that music makes me feel similar things. Music equals dopamine. And socially, because I used to use booze to mask and sort of fit in whilst sober, I became so self-aware. Things that weren't accepted socially, I had to sit with the uncomfortableness of interrupting and being side-eyed from someone across the table, and actually using my voice and speaking up instead of mirroring others or just agreeing with others to kind of like fly under the radar. Do you know what I mean? I actually had to feel that, and now I don't give a fuck. I'm able to separate all of that. I know why I'm doing that. If people have an issue with that, it actually is not my problem. We don't need to explain ourselves. I also cut out certain types of booze. It is very rare you will see me with a glass of wine in my midst now. There is so much sugar in wine. Dog hangovers, mate. I will now only drink pints or margaritas or any clear sort of spirit, and even with pints it's like 2 and I'm done. That's the difference between almost 31-year-old me. It's like I know anything after that I don't actually need it, whereas before I'd be like, double park me and I'll see you on the other side. Silly. Also, seltzers, they are so good. They don't give you like a dry mouth, which I can't stand for sensory reasons. I also became more intentional with events. I stopped going out every single weekend. Obviously, I returned to the rave, but yeah, I stopped going out every single weekend, stopped packing my weekends back to back. If I'd seen the DJ on the lineup in the last couple of months, I would prioritise seeing someone else that I ain't seen or hadn't seen for a while, and that started to make me look forward to events so much more. And I spent that downtime in between looking for new music, discovering new genres, reading up about nightlife, the history, which I became really interested in, which is why obviously a lot of my short form is now about that. It also gave me a chance to look at how I was doing my nights, and I re-strategized, you could say. The aim is not to get mash up the gaff. It's to experience as much as possible for as long as possible, because it's like therapy. If you learn about the ways that music, movement, dancing can help your mind and body, not even just for ADHD, but for anxiety, for your mental health, you will see this all so differently because it's like medicine. And lastly, I hope this does not happen to you, but when I got ill 2 years ago, I think now, fucking hell, 2 years ago, I was not able to dance. And I wanted to, but I couldn't physically. The choice was taken away from me, and that made me reflect again, and my perspective on it changed even after like the year break from booze and raves. You don't understand how lucky you are to have 2 leggies that let you dance. The best thing you can ever do is move whilst you're healthy and say yes to going out. Not all the time, because obviously otherwise you'll end up with rave burnout, but be more intentional with it, because you never know when you won't be able to. And that is actually the reason why I started creating content in the first place, over on TikTok and Insta. I started a series called Monthly Dance Floor Pics, because that was a way for me to stay connected to the dance floor whilst I couldn't be on it And so I guess I wouldn't even be here yapping to you now if it weren't for that. I think that being diagnosed with ADHD, learning so much, becoming self-aware, really separating booze and everything else and just looking at it all from a different perspective. So grateful to be at this point that I am now. She'll be 75, mate, and you won't be able to get her off the dance floor. Miss Saggy Bum Cheeks will be shaking. I'll give it a good go anyway. So I broke up with the dance floor for a bit there. I just had to learn to do it in a way that supports my brain, and now I'll never take it for granted again. I hope that was helpful and insightful for yous, and I hope to see yous on the dance floor sometime soon. If you did get to the end and you'd like me to cover any other topics for sit-down videos, let me know and we can yap away. Thanks for coming to the first ever NeuroDiva convention, and I'll see ya in the next one.